Matt Norlander, fantastic college basketball writer, analyst, and more, joins us. CBS with us on 365 Sports. Matt, thank you very much for your time. Great to have you. We were just discussing Fordham and the penalties that they were hit with. I don't get it, especially in this day and age. Maybe when they were doing it, it wasn't quite yet. You're not supposed to do that. But they hammered Fordham. Is this because you're mad at Kentucky, North Carolina, and maybe KU, so you hammer Fordham?
No, I know that's why. Thanks for having me, guys. I know
You're welcome.
It's an old Tarkanian line, and certainly in the point of that line, as you well know, but for your audiences, the NCAA, traditionally speaking, wants to show that it has some semblance of a spine when it comes to punishments, and doing that against the biggest and most powerful programs might not be in your best interest, but no one's going to fight back if you put a mid-major under serious discipline. So with Fordham, if you talked about all of it, we're not going to get into too many of the details here, but it is a bit ironic here. I mean, Fordham had a few prospective players, two of which went on to play at Fordham under former coach Keith Ergo, and set up photo shoots, in New York City, took him to a Giants game, and some of this stuff was deemed at the time to be an impermissible benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Now Fordham is going to get vacated from those wins that it had, and it is going to be slapped with a fine and lose some recruiting days. And frankly, this stuff just doesn't land with me whatsoever. As I put on Twitter a couple days ago, if you have the right people that are supporting your program from a donor perspective, recruiting days don't really matter from a portal perspective. They don't really matter. I had one coach earlier this week tell me, the one good thing about, and this all ties to Fordham, said one of the good things about where we're at now is I don't suffer the heartbreak recruiting players that I used to now, because although this coach was saying the money is the most important thing, he said it's really not everything. Yes, some of these players are going to take their biggest offer, but I understand why people get cynical on that end. But man, these recruitments in the portal, they might last 2 days, they might last 10 days at most, but it's really starts and is over quickly. And if you get a guy, awesome. If you don't, well, you didn't grow an attachment to him the way that you used to when you were building out traditionally, overwhelmingly through high school targets. And so I say that to say, if Fordham is able to rally itself the kind of recruiting budget that new coach Mike Magpio, I believe, will, these restrictions are not going to prevent Fordham from getting the players that it should be capable of getting at that level.
Yeah. Matt, PJ Haggerty wants reportedly $4 million. Now, he's been at several schools. He just had his best overall season. Is he going to get that amount, or will it be something a little short of that?
I have no idea if he's going to get that amount. It only takes one. I talked about this earlier on Thursday with my co-host Gary Parrish on the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball podcast. We got into a discussion about Hagerty and Memphis and everything. It is a reported $4 million ask, perhaps, and that if indeed that's the case, a number of days have passed since he went into the portal. The reality of where the situation might stand on Thursday evening here could be different from where it was, say, Monday afternoon. But if he gets it, good on him. If not, it won't surprise me. Hagerty, was a top 3 scorer, top 5 scorer in college basketball this past season. He was a second-team All-American on a Memphis team that was plenty good. Oh, by the way, but there's a difference. I think the $4 million number is out there for a couple of reasons. One, I reported after JT Toppin returned to Texas Tech that his NIL deal was worth $4 million. I'm also told there are incentives attached to that deal. So here you have Hagerty looking at Toppin, who same general area. To me, Toppin was one of the 5 best players in the country last season. I would have had Hagerty anywhere between, say, top 8 or top 12. And so he sees a number attached and he says, okay, well, why can't we go get that? So I get that. But while there are no shortage of schools that have plenty of money to work with, the number of schools that would both find a fit for Hagerty and be able to meet that asking price is probably pretty small. Doesn't mean he won't get it. Maybe he will get it. But ultimately, you would think and hope that his decision will be guided by not just the money, obviously, but okay, you're going to spend another year or two in school. How good of an NBA prospect are you? What place is going to enable you to best improve your overall stock as a future professional in basketball, and put you in a situation where you're going to be able to thrive, be successful, and then play games that matter, and play games on a team for a team that will be relevant, in November, December, and then when it means most in February and March.
Has there been a story in college basketball, and of course here locally, when you had the Rob Wright story that he had signed with Baylor and then ended up at BYU? That's part of the business. Has there been a story like Nico and Tennessee and UCLA in men's basketball?
So the answer is no in this regard. So the Nico story got really public really fast. Tennessee moved on. Allegedly he and his family were looking for a $4 million payday there for a quarterback, right? We haven't had that. Now, have there been instances in college basketball where, let's call it a top 2 player on a given roster? Basketball is obviously different than football,
Right. Sure.
But a top 2 player on a roster had asked for more money and didn't get it, and then moved on to a different spot. Yeah, I think that's fair to say that has happened. We saw it happen. Now, this wasn't a top 2 player. This was not a top 5 player, but Denzel Aberdeen's going to play at Kentucky next season. He was an important piece on Florida's national championship team, and he was a projected starter, and he went and asked for a substantial increase in his money deal, and I was told by sources that Florida was not going to meet that number, and so then it became his choice to say, okay, I'll go in the portal and find a team. In Kentucky, as far as I'm concerned, Kentucky is top 3 in money resources in this year's cycle, and it was more than happy to bring Aberdeen aboard. Whether or not they got him at a true discount or not, who's to say? But yes, there have been instances where players have requested more and been told no, and then gone in the portal. Although I will also say this, I shared this earlier this week. So I was talking to a high major coach. I doubt this is a unique situation, but I got to talking to a high major coach. And this coach said, he actually told me this. So the portal closed Tuesday at midnight. Tuesday, technically Wednesday at 12 a.m., but it was Tuesday night, right? So we got to talking on Tuesday afternoon, and he told me this story. He said, I'll tell you the story, but the deal is you can't share it until tomorrow after the portal's closed. And I said, okay, fine. What is it? So he said, a few months ago, anticipating what this was going to be this cycle, like last year was a huge jump from the year before, and this year was going to be even crazier. I just knew it. So there was a general understanding in our program of how big our NIL budget was. But what I really didn't tell anyone was I basically stored 10%, like, what players in our program or the agents, they might have thought the number was this, but it was actually about 10% more than it actually was, because, I thought we were going to do a really good job at retaining most everyone that we wanted to retain, get them at a price that we thought would be fair. And the coach actually said, like, I'm actually pretty comfortable with everything we did. I actually don't feel like we overpaid a single player, but he said, I did feel like there was a chance that I might have 1 or 2 guys get to me in the week 10 days before the portal closed, and be it on their own accord or after having been contacted by other people from other programs, say, hey, listen, can we, I might have to go in the portal. Like, is there any more money for me? And what the coach said was, like, I do have a limit, but there were a couple guys on my team where if they did, I did have an extra bit on the side that I was willing to renegotiate. The deal had already been, keep in mind, the deals had already been agreed to with these players. But then as the portal stuff went along, I think it was only one player on this particular team went back to this head coach, and I think it was with his parents, and said, can we get an extra X amount on top of it? He didn't tell me the number. It could have been 25,000. It could have been 100,000, whatever it was. And so this coach had that at the ready and handy, but he said, for this player, yes, but if it had been player DF, DEF, G,
right,
whatever, I wouldn't have done it. But like this guy, like couldn't lose him. And so the portal stories have been very entertaining and intriguing. And just real quick as a tag to that, the coaches don't all think alike on this stuff. The way that they are handling their situations in their own programs, some coaches are extremely confident. Some coaches are extremely ticked off. Some coaches are extremely tired. Some coaches are extremely intrigued by what's going to be next here. Some are mentally in much better places than others. And it is interesting to hear from a variety of them. The portal's now closed. Thankfully, it's only a 30-day period. I'd argue it should be even less, but whatever. And so now we move on to who will commit where. We're probably about, I don't know, in terms of the high major stuff, like we feel like we're 65% or so through the high major commitment phase, and that'll obviously continue over the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Oh yeah, now they do the wait out the NBA draft cycle thing, see who comes back and all that, and that's always a really interesting time. Matt, who do you think has improved himself the most through this portal? Especially given that some teams had to do like what Arkansas did last year and start from, basically 2 or less players on the roster.
I think St. John's has done the best job. Now, St. John's was a team that was top 10-ish quality at the end of the season. It got booted before it wanted to, obviously, but considering everything that St. John's lost and everything that it brought in, I would put the Johnnies at the top. I mean, they have Ian Jackson, who might be one of the 5 best sophomores in the country next season. They have Isaiah Sellers, who your audience may not know who that is, but he was a solid 3-point shooter. They need more 3-point shooting. They got him from Stanford. Dylan Mitchell, people in your state are familiar with when he played at a different school previously. He might even be coming off the bench, which is wild. They retained Zuby Ejiofor. They got, there's another player that I'm blanking on. St. John's, though, to me, did the best job. Michigan would be pretty close behind. This is another team that was very good. And right now with Michigan, everything it's brought in, it's done a pretty solid job. I think Kentucky's done a pretty good job. I think Tennessee's done a good job. Now, Tennessee also added a high school prospect, Nate Ament, who very well could be a top 10 pick, 14 months from now. But it wasn't just that. They got Jacoby Gillespie from Maryland as well. Iowa, I thought, did well for itself. So those are some of the bigger ones that pop out to me most.
So last year, and the Big 12 with Houston Tech, obviously BYU, Arizona, Iowa State, Baylor, and Scott Drews had to completely revamp his roster and is not done. Are those teams, if I was to say of those 6 teams, all of them are back in the tournament next year, that would not be a surprise. If one doesn't get back, Matt, who might that be?
All right. Houston, Tech, Arizona,
BYU. Iowa State, BYU, and Baylor.
Okay, so you didn't include Kansas in there, just to be clear.
Well, because I did not include Kansas. I had a follow-up on Kansas. I'm sorry.
Got it. No, you're good. You're good. All right, so I would say, back in the preseason, there were 2 teams I whiffed on big time, and by whiffing, I didn't have them in my preseason top 20.
Sure.
One of them was Auburn. Yikes. And the other one was Iowa State, which was also a miss, not as big of a miss as Auburn. Otzelberger's just done it's hard for me to see Iowa State slipping too far. I guess I would have to say Baylor. And the reason why is Baylor stands to it's going to have the most changeover. So therefore it's the most unpredictable. So that's something to keep in mind. Although Kevin Young did a good job in his first season. Man, oh man, getting Rob Wright. I know where I'm talking, but
that's okay.
AJ DeBanza might have just been given an absolute gift. Robert Wright just played with VJ Edgecombe, possible top 5 pick. played with Cooper Flagg in high school, and now he's going to play with AJ DeBansa. Just a fascinating development for him, and he's also a really, really good player. That being said, we'll see. DeBansa's such a mega talent, and the whole way that your program operates changes in dramatic ways. I think they'll be fine, but Rutgers did just have 2 top 5 picks on its roster and became the first school ever to miss the tournament despite having 2 top MBI.
Craig, you brought that up earlier in the week, a couple of guys that don't get drafted. What has Kansas been doing that has allowed them to slip? Obviously a tough conference, but they don't seem like there's something missing.
You're talking like just like the past couple of years in general?
Yeah, because the standard we know is so high.
The standard is high. I wrote about this during the season. Like, the standard is I just happen to think this is factual. I don't even think this is an opinion. Kansas, by virtue of winning the Big 12 regular season the way that it did for the overwhelming majority of Bill Self's career and getting 1s, 2s, and 3 seeds for almost every single, like, the standard is literally different at Kansas than anywhere else. It has the longest NCAA tournament appearance streak in the history of the event. Like, even Kentucky, Carolina, Duke, these schools have gone through like 1-year dips of not making the tournament. That has not happened at Kansas. Like, Kansas coming off a 7 seed, 11-9 run in the Big 12. It is very much a swerve from what it's been. Reasons for it. To oversimplify it, I feel like this past season you had complacency in leadership positions on that roster, and at a certain point they were only going to hit a collective level, and Bill Self could only do so much to change that overall. A big roster overhaul, I think, will benefit Kansas in a major way. I don't think Kansas is probably going to be a preseason top 10 team, but that might benefit the program. It's coming off 2 consecutive seasons in which it was preseason number 1, and it continued the trend. Kansas has been number 1, I want to say 6 times now. It might be 5, but I think it's 6 times been a preseason number 1. Never in the same year has it been a preseason number 1 and made the Sweet 16. It's a wild jinx.
That's wild. That's a long trend with evidence right there.
You know, my wife is a Kansas super fan, and we were talking about it last night. And I was telling her about. I said, the most telling moment. Because you mentioned the complacency of leadership positions for me, and like when coaches get candid in a press conference, like it's rare, as you know. Like, usually it's coach speak, and then you get these little moments. But when they had the long road trip that they stayed on the road out west, and he thought, this is going to be where I can kind of, we can loosen up, we can be away, we can do some different things. He's like, I thought this was going to be good for us, and it was the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Kind of showed you, like, yeah, this team was, from that point on, Bill Self was just trying to pull every little bit of coaching, juice he had out of him. Would it surprise you if he is 1 or 2 years from moving to Florida and fishing every day?
No, it wouldn't surprise me. Now, remember, there was... Oh, man, there's just so much stuff that happens in the season. There was like that random 36-hour period where it got there was like 1 or 2 people that reported that Bill Self was not going to retire. I just didn't think that was in the air. However, if you told me that Bill Self was within 3 seasons of retirement, I would absolutely believe you. I refuse to be surprised by any coach with more than like 12 years of head coaching experience in Division I retiring. Like, wouldn't surprise me. Like, if John Shire retired in a year, yes, that would be surprising.
Yeah,
that would
sure.
surprise everyone. Bill Self, no, wouldn't surprise me. But I am interested to see what Kansas. I mean, Darren Peterson, he is nasty. He's actually a player that our 247 Sports guys, which work in conjunction with us at CBS Sports, they have Peterson ahead of DeBansa in their final ranking. So they felt strong enough that he's been that good. And I wonder if Peterson, not just him, but mostly him, if he can be so dynamic, so good that it almost reinvigorates Self here. And what I think is fair to say now, he is in the winter of his career. Now, the winter might be in the first few weeks of it, but given how long he's been a coach, interested to see what happens there.
Texas Tech, Grant McCasland, another Coach Drew limb, in what he's done. And they've played just like he's always been wherever he's been. They've had to deal with the portal. They've brought some in. They've lost some talent too. Your thoughts about where they are, and should they next year, if things continue, to beat somewhere in the top 10 in the preseason?
Yeah, they'll have a case for it, no doubt. I mean, bringing back Toppin, it'll probably be either Toppin, Purdue's Braden Smith, Cameron Boozer for preseason National Player of the Year. Probably one of those three that gets the honor, be it with the AP or us at CBS Sports or number of outlets.
Sure.
Stuff now. So yeah, I think Texas Tech will be a preseason top 10 team. McCasland's done a really nice job. It's been impressive to see him take that job and keep Texas Tech like a program that matters nationally. Now, like Mark Adams had 1 year where he did a nice job, and then it kind of just really careened really quickly. And then it would have been understandable if McCasland in year one was just whatever. And then this year two, which was this past year, if he got him into the tournament with like a 9 seed. Hasn't been that. Texas Tech was a top 10 team in the metrics for the majority of the back half of last season as well. So yeah, he's done a really, really good job. And I don't expect Texas Tech to fall off much, if at all. I mean, Tech was really one collapse away from making the Final Four, period.
Mm-hmm.
And I do expect that to be a top 4 program. I usually give myself safer parameters around this, but I think it'll be a top 4 program in the Big 12, definitely. And I think it will be a top 12 program, broadly speaking, next season in college hoops.
How much and how long can Houston keep knocking on the door before there's an emotional, like, wear and tear letdown? We know Kelvin Sampson's Hall of Fame. He's got a bunch of players back. He's also adding some to the mix. But my God, Matt, that was so close. And yet, sometimes it's hard to pick yourself back up off the floor, but he's a fighter.
Well, he is a fighter. He is not close to retirement. I mean, I was told that heading into the Final Four, and I think this only fuels him even more. Houston may well be the preseason number 1 team in the country next season. If it's not number 1, it will either be 2, 3, and I think no worse. I think 4 is the floor for the Cougars. Now, being a preseason top 4 team, top 2 team, guarantees nothing. But we see that the way that Kelvin Sampson has run that program and the fact that he has had now, let me just check right now. I'm checking KenPom as we speak. So Houston finished, this is absolutely wild, man. Houston finished second at KenPom again. It has done that 4 years in a row. Finished number 2 at KenPom. There's only, I think, one other school, and it was Duke back late 90s, early 2000s. Only one other school ever has gone 4 consecutive seasons with top 2 finishes, and Duke might not have even done that specifically. So I bring that up to say little evidence that things will drop off there, and the Cougars should again be a major factor. And we wait and see if they're even done yet in terms of their gets or not. Their backcourt's pretty good. I'm waiting to see if they add another big before we get out of here.
Couple of more questions for Matt Norlander. Paul?
Matt, can Baylor overcome the loss of Rob Wright to really contend? They've gotten some nice pieces, but he was the guy they were going to build the offense through next year.
Yes, Scott's a good enough coach to do it. I think, and I haven't talked to Scott yet this offseason. I probably won't let him build a roster, figure it out, and then we'll catch up later in the offseason. But I think if there's a coach with the right disposition to gather himself, his staff, that program, and make sure that this doesn't have a significant drop off, I just think Scott is wired the right way to do it. Mm-hmm. But will Baylor ultimately have a player as talented as Wright in the program? Probably not. Now, it's gotten some good gets so far. Like, it's done well. But the fact that, and actually, I saw this out there. You guys can probably confirm this with me, but it's been so busy that I didn't check this. Is it actually true that every single scholarship player that was on Baylor's roster last season has left? Is that true?
Yes. Well, Cameron Carr technically.
Well, he was a Tennessee transfer, but he didn't play.
He didn't play.
He was on the roster, but was not playing.
So every scholarship player that played minutes last season for Baylor has left the program.
Gone.
Yep.
That's
Arkansas had that same situation with Calipari, and
it was coaching change, different.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's my follow up to you, Matt. And my last question for you. Thank you for your time. You hear about the culture of joy, and we haven't been able to talk to Scott yet either. And he's kind of, I'm sure, just running around with the staff, and they're trying to do a great job to refill it. But they have this, what is a tremendous culture now in this day and age of NIL. Things change the portal. But that's like, why would they have to deal with that? Because you would think they're so tight knit.
Yeah, I don't know. Now, some of this is obviously as you well know, it's a function of losing a number of seniors on the roster. So like there's only so much you can do when you had 5 seniors, 5 guys that had eligibility expire. But even still, and Scott also is a coach who, generally speaking, doesn't have he likes to have play 7. Like he doesn't like to play 10.
Absolutely.
So by pure nature of that as well, these are reasons why we found ourselves here. And Edgecombe was always going to be a one and done player. That was known from the get go there. But yeah, it is a very valid, real, and vexing question. Like why is it Baylor? Why does a program 4 years removed from winning a national championship with a coach who is as well liked and enthusiastic as Scott Drew, why was it Baylor that was the program that had to do this? Because you're right, we had it with Arkansas. We also had it a few years ago with LSU. Matt McMahon took over the job. He didn't have a player on his roster for a 36-hour period or whatever. With coaching changes in the portal era, I get it, but with a Hall of Fame level coach, it is interesting, and maybe we have a really good story coming. Maybe we do. Maybe maybe by mid-January of 2026, we will see a Baylor team that's 14-4 or something, and has managed to come out the other side better for it. But it's a late career challenge that I don't think Drew ever expected to find himself in. And I want to be fair to the audience here. Like Baylor could be good enough to rally and be the 3rd best team in the Big 12, or maybe this will be like a lost year, and maybe Baylor will be, the 12th best team in a 16-team Big 12. Like I think all of those things are very much on the table.
Man, it's great to have you. You're doing a great job, Matt. Some of the guys in the chat room are also mentioning it's great to get you on. We appreciate your time. Have a great rest of your weekend.
All right, Eagle. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Matt Norlander. God, it does seem like the weekend. Matt Norlander, CBS